If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything that you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on any listening platform like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the Wartime Leadership Podcast, where we explore what spiritual resiliency looks like from different perspectives. We often focus on the physical, emotional, and social areas of resiliency, but too often we neglect the spiritual pillar. Now, this looks different for everyone. We will be exploring what spiritual resiliency looks like in the lives of our guests, who are people from all different walks of life. Tonight's episode is sponsored by Success Draft, where we help you transform your dreams into drafted plans. Head over to successdraft.com to get started on your future today. This episode's guest is Scott Deluzio. Now, look at that, Scott. I did it. I said it correctly.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. See, hey, folks, y'all don't even know. Like, I was so worried. Anytime I see a word over 4 letters, I just kind of start to get nervous. Am I going to say this correctly? And you don't want to screw up somebody's name. Like, that's legacy right there.
It is. And I've done that so many times to so many different people. I always am cringing anytime I have a name, like you said, anything over 4 letters. I'm like, okay, what is this name gonna sound like when I can read it in my head? It's gonna be perfect. I'm gonna have it 100%, and then as soon as it leaves my lips, it sounds like garbage. And
But you all have no idea. We had this long conversation before we even got started, and let me just tell you, I was so nervous because this wouldn't be the first time. This wouldn't be the first time that I did this. And in fact, the last time I did it was with Brian Bergford. And let me tell you, whenever I was talking about the cops, because he was talking about how he would just go flying down the road and he knew how long red lights were and he'd fly through them because nobody was going to be there. And the one time I got his name right was when I was talking about the cop episode. And I said, hey, guys, go find Brian Bergford out there. And he's like, man, the one time you got my name right. I'm like, oh, man, it's when I'm talking about the cop chase. All right. Hey, you know what? We're going to get started, Scott, with 5 easy questions. All right. These are softball. They're not difficult. They're not hard. All right. What is one thing that you find repulsive?
Wet clothes. That is something that always will bother me, I think. So a little background on that. I had hypothermia when I was training to go over to Afghanistan. And it came because I was out all night in the rain. My clothes got soaked. It was cold and wound up with hypothermia. And to this day, I just, even if my kids squirt me with a water gun or something like that, just makes my skin crawl, drives me crazy.
Well, I was going to ask, was it because you had clothes on, or is it just the smell of whenever they've been sitting there for a while? Story makes sense.
It's just that wet feeling. It just, even going to the pool, like I don't even enjoy that anymore. I used to love going swimming, or I used to scuba dive and everything. I just don't enjoy that anymore. Just that feeling drives me crazy.
So it makes you feel repulsive. All right. So What is one thing that is in your online shopping cart that you just haven't bought yet? You just can't buy it yet.
I've been looking to honestly upgrade the podcast setup that I have here, upgrade the microphone, things like that. Just haven't pulled the trigger on that yet.
You're like, oh, I want to do it so bad. See, I've been doing that with different systems as well. So I understand. My producer, G. Scott, this dude, he hooked me up with an amazing setup. So I'm blessed by my producer for sure. I think he just got sick and tired of hearing my voice in different ways. So he was like, nah, I'm going to send you something that's worth it. So,
Right.
all right. What is one thing that you absolutely love about your job?
I love the fact that I can work from home. I can set my own hours. It just really uh, gives me a lot of freedom in my day to day work. The things that I'm able to do just uh, really helps out, especially around the house when the kids have a doctor's appointment or I need to cut out to take them to practice. Just really helps things out in around the house.
Man, that's awesome. So on the flip side, what is one thing that you would leave your job for?
Oh gosh, this job has provided me so many opportunities. Obviously more money is always welcome, so if I had a higher paying job out there somewhere, perhaps I could, consider leaving for something like that. But, honestly, it's just been so good to me to be able to do all the things that I do. It would have to be a significant amount of money more to leave for.
Yeah, you can't buy happiness.
No, exactly.
Especially when you're sitting in a job that you actually feel respected. You like going to work. The traffic on the way to your work is just absolutely amazing. I mean, there may be some pebbles along that way, so
Right.
I know you have to wear sandals to be able to get across the driveway sometimes. So I mean, that may be a little painstaking.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, hey Scott, final question. What is or who is your favorite superhero?
Superhero. Oh gosh. Let's go with Superman. It's probably a one of those cop out kind of answers because he just seems like he got it all going, right? But I mean, literally, there's like one thing that really could stop him, and as long as you steer clear of that stuff, I mean, you got it made, right?
Well, I think with him, it was actually two things. It was kryptonite and women.
Oh, well, okay,
I
yeah,
mean,
you're
because
right.
she
Yeah,
made him make the choice, right?
yeah, yeah. So okay, maybe there's two things. All right, so maybe he's not quite as great as I was thinking, but honestly, who among us wouldn't be in that same situation, right?
Touche, Scott. Touche. All right. Hey, Scott, why don't you take us on a little background journey? Kind of bring us up to date, who you are, what you do, what you've been doing.
Yeah,
Kind of just take us on your road, brother.
sure. So I served for about 6 years in the Connecticut Army National Guard as an infantryman. We deployed to Afghanistan in 2010, and that was towards the end of my enlistment. Um, During that time, that we were over there, we conducted a number of infantry operations, around our area. We were searching villages. We were, for Taliban activity. We did border security operations. We did all sorts of things like that, which was really incredible opportunity and experience to have. And I'm sure we'll get more into my deployment later, so I don't want to dive too much into that at this point. After getting back home from the deployment, I, like a lot of other people, had some issues with returning home and the stresses that I dealt with, the losses, things like that, that just became too much. I didn't quite know how to handle them, and I was handling them in some very unhealthy ways. And
Mhm.
I found that there were other people out there who also were struggling. The company that I served with over in Afghanistan, we were very fortunate. We didn't lose any soldiers.
Oh, wow.
Everyone made it home. Um, but when we got home, we started losing some of those very same soldiers to suicide, and that just didn't sit right with me. It wasn't okay with me that these people would go through a year in a place where people literally wanted to kill them and make it out okay, and come home and be in a place where people wanted nothing but the best for them, and now they're losing their lives, and that just didn't make sense to me. So um, after losing one obviously is too many, but when those numbers start piling up, it just got to be too much, and I needed to do something about it. So
Mhm.
I decided to start my podcast, the Drive On podcast, which focuses on helping out military veterans, their families, the community in general. It doesn't matter what branch you're in: Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, Space Force. There's something in there for all of us. And the information that I'd like to share is other inspirational stories. So talk to other veterans about things that they've gone through, things that they've experienced, and more importantly, how they've gotten themselves better because of those experiences and what steps that they took, things like that. But we also share other organizations like nonprofits that offer resources to veterans that may not be all that well known. So we all know about the VA and other organizations like that that provide services to veterans,
Mhm.
but they're a large bureaucracy, and I'm not bashing them at all. They're doing the best that they can with the resources they have to work with, but there's a lot of people to serve. And so that's where some of these other nonprofits and other organizations step in, and they fill in the gaps where that need is not being met. And they're able to do things a lot quicker in a lot of cases than the VA is able to do. And so I want to share those resources with the veterans out there. Ultimately, the name of the game is to provide hope to veterans who are struggling and have the issues that they're dealing with. So
Now, tell us about Drive On. Tell us about the actual name. I know where it comes from. I'm military, so talk some of those civilians through what Drive On is.
yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. So the phrase "drive on" in the military, and there's other phrases similar to it in the military, but "drive on" is sort of like when you're facing something difficult, a tough obstacle, one of those nearly impossible situations that seems like you might be facing, and it's like, okay, yeah, this sucks, it's hard, but keep going. Don't just quit on it. Keep going until you reach your objective. If it's maybe you're on a long ruck march and it starts to pouring rain and it's sucking out there, right? And you're trudging through the mud, and you're just in a miserable state at that point. You might turn to someone and say, hey, just drive on, we're almost there, we'll get through this. And same idea with the veterans who are out there who are struggling. They're going through something that just sucks in their life. They're going through their own soaking wet ruck march, or whatever you want to call it. They're dealing with PTSD or substance abuse or homelessness or depression or any other number of things. They can't find a job after getting out of the military, or they lost that sense of purpose and belonging that they had.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things suck, and we want to help those people drive on and get through that, because we all know anyone who's been in that situation and has come through the other side know that there's better stuff waiting for you.
Oh,
And it's
absolutely.
it's okay to suck every now and again, but just keep going. Don't quit on yourself. Don't quit on the people who are around you. And so really that's kind of the background of the name. I wanted to tie it into the military and use a phrase that I think a lot of service members will relate to.
No, and I absolutely love the concept, because there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of organizations. There's not just the wounded warriors. There's not the just the VA, but there's a lot of these small organizations that are actually getting funding from the government in a lot of cases to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of veteran-owned businesses that are opening up, such as like the hunting clubs, other things where stuff that we can associate to as Air Force soldiers, Marines, whatever the case may be, where we can attach ourselves to the concept of what they're trying to do to help us navigate through life's issues that we deal with.
Yeah.
So I love the concept that you have there, Scott, where you're actually bringing in organizations to talk through it, as well as having real stories of real people there.
Yeah. And it's a big mix of both types of conversations. I don't want to overwhelm people with the inspirational stories, because some of those things might be triggering to some people. They may not want to necessarily hear those things, but the other organizations that are out there, they're there to help. And if you don't know about them, then you're not going to know that help or that resource is even available. So, without a lot of research on your end. So I tried to do that research and reach out to these organizations and get the people who can share about what they do on the show, share it, get that information out there. And hopefully the people who are listening, whether it's a veteran themselves or a loved one who notices that they're going through some stuff and needs some help, maybe they're listening to it too, and they can put them in contact and nudge them in that right direction.
Oh, and absolutely. I mean, you are truly a leader amongst vets, and that's kind of how you deal with what you have been through, is to help other people, right? And that's beautiful to watch happen. Yeah,
absolutely. I've been there. I've been struggling. I've had my own issues, and I think if we all got together and just help show each other the right direction, because I may have times when I'm continuing to struggle, and I may need someone to help just guide me back in that right direction. If we can all do that, I think that'll just make our whole military community just much better place to be.
Absolutely. So from being a leader on the battlefield to being a leader at the business that you're working for now, I'm sure that your leadership style has developed over the years. So what is your leadership style, and what are some of those key factors that have played into that?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things for me as far as leadership goes. And this is, again, like you said, it's developed over time. I remember when I was first promoted to E5 sergeant, when I first became an NCO, I sort of let that go to my head, and I would just find like little things to like nitpick on with people. And there was this really humbling experience that I had very early on when I first became an NCO, probably within the first few days or even a couple weeks of being an NCO, where I was getting on somebody for something stupid and small, and I was making them do push-ups or something like that, just to kind of correct them. And when I realized how insignificant this thing was that I was getting on them for, when I realized it was when the rest of the team that I was in charge of decided to get down and start doing push-ups with them. It wasn't just that one guy.
Wow.
It was the rest of the group who got out and got down on the ground right next to him and just started pushing. And I was like, yeah, that makes me feel like I'm about, an inch tall at this point, because, really I was kind of being a jerk, and I shouldn't have been. And I knew better. I don't know what it was. It just was one of those things where I felt like was the appropriate response. And then I realized it maybe wasn't the most appropriate response. Try to, take things with a grain of salt, and you don't have to be such a hard ass all the time. You can work your way up to being a hard ass if need be. If the situation keeps escalating, then okay, yeah, be a hard ass. But on a one-off kind of you screwed something up, a small minor thing, it's like not that big of a deal. So
yeah, well, you've got to set the standard before you can enforce it in that way, right?
Exactly. And being so fresh and new as a NCO, it really wasn't my place. I didn't even have the opportunity to set a standard at that point. I barely even knew the guys, because I transferred to a new unit. And so like I barely even knew the guys who I was with. And so they put me in my place really quick. And, I was, it was a humbling experience. It was one of those experiences I still carry with me to this day, all these years later. So, it was a sucky experience at the time, but it was good later on. The other thing too is, kind of to that point is, I kind of learned to lead by example. And I feel like that's sort of what I'm doing with my podcast, is just showing people that, how to help out other people. Right. And getting resources and information in the minds, in the hands of the people that need it the most. And, I hope that the things that I do will inspire other people to go out and help other people. It doesn't necessarily have to mean starting their own podcast or YouTube channel or anything like that. Although if they do, great. And I've said this before too, is that there are other podcasts out there who have a similar mission to what I have in terms of helping out the military community. And I don't look at them as competition, like trying to get more likes and, subscribers and all that kind of stuff. I don't really care. The end of the day, as long as we're helping out somebody, even if it's a combined effort, great. That's all I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
More power to them. If they end up getting more subscribers and followers and all that kind of stuff, to me, that those numbers are just vanity numbers. I don't care. If I'm helping somebody, then I'm helping somebody, and that's really all that matters to me.
Yeah, my whole goal was to help one person.
Yeah.
If I help one, goal accomplished. If
Exactly.
it goes beyond that, then great. But it's like this. If I plant the seed, somebody else is going to water it. Eventually somebody's going to fertilize it. Eventually somebody's going to help harvest it. And we all had a part of that, then that's fine. I don't need to be the harvester. I don't need to see everything come, to that end. I just need to know that I was a part of it along the way.
Right. And every week, I release 2 episodes a week. Every week I look at the numbers of the downloads and all that kind of stuff. And, of all the people who download the episodes and listen to the episodes, I hear from a very, very small fraction of those people. But I know that there's people out there who are still listening to it. They're listening to the podcast and they're getting some information from it. And that to me just says, okay, I may not know necessarily every single person, what their name is, what their story is, what their background. That doesn't matter. I don't need to know all that stuff. I know that there's people out there who are listening to it and getting the information that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. So how has your time in the military and what you've been doing now that's transcended into the podcast, but beyond the podcast to what you do every day at work? Yeah. How do you lead teams in that way? Like how are you the leader?
Yeah. And again, I think leading by example and doing the things that you ask other people to do, in terms of, there might be some of that grunt work that needs to be done, and I'll do the grunt work, from time to time. And it's not just as a show, just to put on a show for people to say, yeah, I can do this, and you should do this too. I'll do it, once a month or once a quarter or whatever the thing is, right? I'll do it like on a regular basis. I'll go in, I'll do the work. I see something needs to be done. We don't have enough manpower, maybe, one day or whatever to accomplish whatever the task is. I'm going to go in, I'm going to help out. I'm going to roll the sleeves and do the work that needs to be done. So, it's again, just leading by example, showing that I'm willing to do the stuff that I'm asking other people to do. And just making sure that the people also are being taken care of, that they have the resources that they need to do their job effectively, that it's not putting an extra burden on them to get the job done because they don't have all the resources that they need available to them. So, really it's looking out for people and leading by example are really the 2 main things that I think kind of guide my leadership philosophy.
In the back of my head, I'm also going and not being that guy who steps out once a month to sweep the floor and make sure that everybody sees you. Like when they come back from lunch and you're like, okay, now sweep. Hey, look at me, guys.
Yeah,
I'm cleaning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey,
and
so
that type of thing would drive me nuts. And now I am the type of person who does sweep the floors and does vacuum the floors because I work from home. And so, it's my house. So I kind of have to, but
yeah, your boss makes you do it, right?
Yeah. That's my wife.
Yeah. She sits over your shoulder just like mine does and goes, yeah, there you go. Good job.
There you go. Make sure that's clean. Yeah.
Hey, so the whole point of my podcast is really to kind of help define spiritual resiliency for people, to help people see what that looks like in different ways, because we try to cookie cutter it. We try to make it very specific but it's very specific to the person. right? It doesn't have to be a Christian viewpoint. It doesn't have to be a Catholic, a Muslim, and agnostic. It doesn't have to be any one thing for somebody. It should be very personal to that person. So when I say spiritual resiliency, what comes to mind to you, Scott?
When I first heard that phrase, spiritual resiliency, the thing that popped in my head is the other types of resiliency that we talk about, the like physical resiliency, being able to physically endure hard things that you might be doing physically, right? There's mental resiliency where you're having to mentally get yourself through certain scenarios and things like that, right? But spiritual resiliency to me it's the ability to put your trust, put your faith in something that may or may not be readily apparent to you. So putting your faith in a higher calling, and again, this is, for me, it's God. Not everybody believes in God, and I understand that, but for me, it's God. Putting my faith in that God who is not visible in terms of, like, I can see you on the screen right now. I can see the book that's on the desk in front of me. I could see those things, but God is more of that abstract concept in terms of for me, I know he's there, but it's not something I could feel and touch and see the way I can with other physical objects or other people or things like that. So that to me is where the resiliency comes in, is being able to put that blind trust into something that's there. It's almost like you see some corporations and stuff where they do this trust test where they have somebody standing up on a platform, they have a bunch of people behind them, and the person has to fall down and trust that someone's going to catch them, right, that they're going to be there. It's kind of scary to take that leap and just fall backwards, because you very well could fall flat on your back and land on the floor.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
But when you do that with your faith, you're putting your trust into, again, something that you can't see, but 100% of the time, with all aspects of your life and everything that you do. And so that takes some a little bit of grit and determination to be able to keep that going in your life.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that word, grit, right? Just the word grit in general. I love when people use that word to describe the resiliency, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, doesn't matter, the grit to get through.
Yeah.
I love that. So how do you build spiritual resiliency within yourself? Like what does Scott do?
I think, like anything, whether it's going to the gym and building muscles by lifting weights, or reading books to improve your mental, your own understanding of different topics and subjects, all that stuff takes practice, and it's not something that just automatically comes to you. Putting your blind faith into something, whatever it is not an easy thing to do. We're kind of trained to be the type of people to where seeing is believing, or hearing or smelling or touching, using our senses, right? And you kind of have to learn to trust something that you can't see or feel or hear or smell, or all those senses that we use takes some practice. And so really it's just those constant reminders that you have to give yourself, and that, hey, I need to put my trust in God, saying that everything's going to turn out the way it's supposed to turn out. Everything's going to be okay. It may not be the way that I necessarily want things to turn out, but my understanding of the way things should be may not be as good as what God's understanding is of how things should be. So to me, it's really just a matter of practicing and repeating to myself that things are going to be okay, and I need to just trust that things will turn out the way they're supposed to turn out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I look at the paintings that are behind you, right? I wish everyone could see them as we're talking. Which, you know what, I think I'll probably put up a little snippet of the video just so people can have an idea. But those paintings, whenever I look at them and I see the resiliency coming out through those, either in the campaign ribbon on the backside, or the differences between the blown up village and the village that's prospering with green grass and everything, where we destroyed something and now something is growing again.
Yeah.
You can see your resiliency journey through those paintings themselves.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because that uh, that act of painting, the artwork that I've created, was a way for me to build more of that resiliency, right? Uh, to help me get through some difficult times that I was going through. That I needed uh, I needed something to kind of ground me and get me more focused in the moment that I was going through, and um, that really helped me to just block out some of the other noise and the other nonsense that I had going on, and it helped me to be more present and focused and on what's going on in the moment.
Yeah. So how do you build spiritual resiliency for your family, your wife, your kids? How do you build it into their lives?
Yeah, so my wife and I are fortunate. We both have very similar outlooks and views on religion, spirituality, things like that. So kind of makes it easy for us, because there might be days when she's really having a hard time, and I'm able to say, just remind her, just keep the faith. Know that God is looking out for you. God is doing good things through you, and that what you're doing is important, and vice versa. I may be having a tough day too, and she comes around and just gives me a similar kind of pep talk, and that helps us to get through things. But we do the same thing with our kids, and I think the reason why I said we're fortunate that we have very similar outlooks is so that the messaging that comes from both of us, whether my kids feel like they want to go talk to mom or they want to come talk to me, uh, they get a similar message, and it's consistent. So it's not confusing to them, especially, young minds. It's hard to wrap your head around
Mhm.
something that's so abstract, right? Something that you, like I was saying before, you can't see or feel or touch this thing that we're talking about, but it's there. And so when you have a consistent message coming from mom and dad, it really helps to uh, solidify the message, and it makes it less confusing for them as they're trying to wrap their heads around what it is that we're trying to tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that they are free to come with questions, because allowing a child to question something is allowing them to have the ability to grow their own foundation.
It is. And one of the things that my wife and I have done for years now with our kids, our oldest is 12 years old. We have a 9-year-old and a 8-year-old, actually, uh, almost 10-year-old. She'll be 10 next week, I think, or 2 weeks from now. Sorry. And so one thing that we've done with them is we've had very uh, honest and open conversations about all sorts of things. When a couple of years ago, when coronavirus first started coming into the news, and all this stuff started getting closed down and lockdowns were taking place and all this other stuff, we explained to them exactly what was going on in the world, and why things were happening the way they were happening. And we didn't want them to make assumptions about the world that maybe weren't true. And then that breeds fear and anger, suspicion, all this stuff that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So we had open and honest conversations about that. Anytime that they had a question about why is this happening or why is that happening, we would talk to them about it, and we'd make it clear what was going on, and what they could expect, right? And so we would do that with all sorts of things. Anytime Even if they hear something on the television about, something going on in the world, well, okay, we'll talk to them about it, in an age appropriate manner. We're not
Mhm.
going to talk about maybe the things that are going on in Ukraine and talk about all the death and destruction and things like that, because
Yeah.
that's not something that an 8-year-old necessarily needs to hear about. But we talk about the general concepts of, there's, this one country is coming into another country and they're trying to take over certain areas, and things like that. So but we tell them, we try not to hold back, obviously keeping things age appropriate, but we try not to hold back from them and hide them from the realities of what goes on in the world, because I don't feel that really does them any good. I feel like the world is still happening around them, and that just might create more confusion for them, and then what are they going to fill in the gaps with?
Yeah, and then it might cause them to not want to come to you to ask the questions, because now they're afraid on whether or not you're just trying to protect them too much versus open their eyes to something.
Right, exactly.
So I want to take this in a little bit different of a direction. So I'd like you to give us a moment, a time when you had to work through something or you had to rely solely on that spiritual pillar. Now, folks, listen, I really try my hardest not to listen or to look too much research on the different guests that are coming in, just simply because I want to have the same impact. I want the stories to have the same impact on me as they do on you. In this case, I kind of kept reading and digging deeper and deeper, because this story is just, I don't know where I would have been. I don't know what I would have done. And you will understand here soon what Scott went through and how he ended up on his road to healing in the way that he did. And I don't want to give anything away, Scott. I don't want to take any of your thunder away. So please give us a moment when you had to rely on that spiritual pillar to make it through.
Absolutely. So when I was deployed to Afghanistan, part of the story that I left out earlier, I said we'd probably get more into it later on, and here we are. Sure enough, we came around to it. So my younger brother was also deployed to Afghanistan at the same time as me. So he and I were in two separate units. He was in the Vermont Army National Guard. I was in the Connecticut Army National Guard, but both of our units fell under the same brigade, and our deployment was a brigade-wide deployment. So we all were deployed at the same time. We were in two different locations, both in eastern Afghanistan, but far enough apart that we didn't see each other while we were there. Well, a few months into the deployment, about probably 6 months or so into the deployment, my brother's unit was out on a patrol going into a village. They suspected Taliban to be in this village. And as they were approaching the village, they walked into an ambush. And very early on in that ambush, my brother was shot and killed during that ambush. Fast forward a little bit, I was also out on a mission that day, and I was in a village doing very similar operations to what he was doing. We were going through a village trying to find Taliban activity, weapons, things like that might have been in this village. And I got a call on the radio, and it said that the commanding officer was looking specifically for me to talk to me. Now, usually, if anyone who, like civilians or whatever, who don't know anything about the chain of command, usually messages like that funnel through the chain of command. You don't usually get called directly to the commanding officer unless you did something incredibly good or you royally screwed something up. And I wasn't getting any medals for the work that I did that day. So, I did my job, but I was not, getting any kind of superstar medals or anything like that. So I was like, oh crap, what did I screw up? And so eventually I linked up with him and he told me what happened. It was like a punch in the gut to me. It felt like the air just got sucked out of my chest. I couldn't fathom the fact that my little brother was gone. It just didn't make any sense to me, how God could decide to take someone so young. He was 25 years old. How he could take someone like that, and he was a good person on top of that. What was the meaning? What was the reason for that? A short time after and again, I do write about this in my book, Surviving Son. But a short time after finding out that my brother was killed, our own unit started taking fire from the village that we had just come out of. And so I had to put aside my grieving and the sadness that I was feeling, because I had a squad to lead, and I had men that I was in charge of, and I needed to make sure that they were going to be safe and that they were going to, be able to help stop this attack that we were facing. So I put all my personal stuff aside. I just shoved that deep down inside of me and focused on the mission and what I had to do. Really, that was the only thing I could do in that moment. There was no safe space. There's no timeout corner. There's no thing like that where I can go sit in a protective bubble and the Taliban would just be like, oh, okay, well, he's having a bad day, so we'll leave him alone. The reality was I had to get back into it and fight, because there was no other option at that point. So a few hours later, after that firefight took place, I was flown out of that village. I was flown out of that area, brought back to Bagram Air Base, the main air base in Afghanistan. And I was taking a shower. And I remember standing there in the shower stall, and I just yelled out, and my brother's name is Stephen. I just yelled out, "Why, Stephen, why?" And it wasn't like I was going crazy thinking that my brother was going to just pop out of nowhere and just answer me. Like, to me, what I was doing, I was yelling out to God, "Why, God? Why would you take Stephen? Why would you take him from us?" And in that moment, I had this incredible calm feeling. I was having it out with God. I was giving it to him. Like I was saying, why would you do something like this? I was questioning my entire religious upbringing. I was questioning why God would do something so horrific to such a good person. But in that moment, I had this incredible calm feeling come over me. And that feeling was that no matter what the answer is, even if God himself came and stood next to me in that shower and laid out exactly what his plan was and exactly what his reasoning was, I don't know that I ever would be okay with any of that, with any reasoning for taking my brother away. But that the reason, whatever it was a good reason. God's plan is always good. He always has good intentions, and he always does what eventually will turn out to be a good situation. You may not like it in the moment. He may test you and try you through various situations. Losing your brother is on top of the list of testing situations. But that moment made me realize that I need to just get okay with this. I need to be okay that God is in control. God has the right plan, the right message in mind, and that he's going to do what needs to be done to achieve whatever that outcome is. I may not like it right now in this moment, but it will be okay. And I just need to get okay with that. And it was this weird, calm feeling that came over me in that moment. And this was, again, just hours after finding out that my brother had been killed. It was just a change in how I thought of things, because I had so much anger and so much hatred towards the people who took part in all of this. And it made me just realize that things are going to be okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I still dealt with anger and sadness and grief afterwards. All of those things are perfectly natural, I think, in the situation that I found myself in. But it gave me that moment when I had that calm feeling, when I was asking God, why would you do this? It gave me something to fall back on. And when I would deal with the anger later on, it gave me something to look back on and say, okay, God is in control. God has this this situation under control, and I can be okay with whatever it is that he's doing right now. And that is what I've fallen back on as far as my own spiritual beliefs and resiliency. I look back to that and I think if I can survive something as horrific as the combat death of my brother while also being in combat myself, I think I could survive just about anything. And I could do that with the help of God and his help, you know.
So about how far away were you all from where you were to where he was?
You know, I don't know exactly that day, the exact distance, because we were in a remote village that barely even shows up on a map. And so looking that up and trying to pinpoint the locations, it was kind of hard to do. I know the bases that we were both on were about 70 or 80 or so miles away from each other. So not an incredibly large distance, but when you're talking about Afghanistan with the mountains and everything,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like you just go hop in the car and drive there because just the terrain is so unforgiving over there. It wouldn't be realistic that we'd be able to ever really get a chance to see each other other than, you know, flying on helicopters or whatever. But it's not like we had those at our disposal. Just go hop on and you know, go hang out or whatever. So,
Well, I think there's probably some people that are wondering why I would ask a question like that. I think because the natural instinct is to want to run to help, right? To
oh,
get
for
there.
sure.
And when you think about 70 miles in that sense, that's nothing. Now,
Yeah.
Afghanistan 70 miles is a lot. Yes.
Right. But, you know, honestly, when I had first found out about my brother, so my commanding officer said that he laid out for me. He said that my brother's unit had been ambushed and then that he had gotten hit. And my initial thought was just like what you said. How could I be there for him? How could I get there? And, you know, I assumed at that point he had been medevaced out. Um, and so I was like, okay, how can I be there for moral support? Does he need blood? Does he need an organ? Does he, you know, whatever it is that I can offer him, I want to be there for him. Because at that point, it didn't even occur to me that he could be killed. Because
Mm.
I don't know, that's just one of those things that happens to other people. That doesn't happen to you, right? That's just the way my mind was thinking, was that that's not something that happens to me, to my family. That's just what happens to the people that you hear about in the news.
Yeah.
But then it all came crashing down when I realized that I was those other people. My family now became the family that everyone hears about in the news. And that came crashing down really quick when the commanding officer said that he had been killed. And that was just totally unexpected.
I think to the normal civilian, to the normal everyday person, that it sounds so barbaric, you know, like we're in the middle of war and then you can't take time to step aside and go take care of your brother or go run and cry or do something. It sounds weird to them, but for you and me, it's normal. Like this is but these are my brothers too.
Yeah,
I've got to take care of this in this moment right here and now.
exactly. And honestly, I don't know how I would be able to live with myself if something happened to one of my guys because I didn't have my head on straight, because I acted out and I did something stupid. You know, honestly, the anger that I felt, that wave of anger and emotion that came over me at one point during this whole ordeal, basically made me want to go Rambo style, just run down into this village and just
Mm-hmm.
kill as many people as I could find. Right? I wanted to, you know, if they were out there, I wanted to shoot them down. But I also knew that if I did something stupid like that, first off, I wasn't making it out alive if I was to do that. That's Hollywood fiction that you can go
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, do that Rambo kind of crap, right? But I also knew that in the military, we'd never leave a fallen soldier, airman, marine, whatever. We never leave someone behind. So that would mean that some of my guys would have to come down and drag my butt out of there, and they would very likely get injured or killed in the process. And I
Mm.
couldn't be okay with that because Even if by some stroke of luck I did make it out, how could I face their families, their wives, their parents, their siblings, their whoever, their kids? How could I face them and say, yeah, because I snapped and I couldn't keep my stuff together, your loved one is no longer with us? That just wouldn't sit right. So no, I had to. Like you said, that's part of the job. You have to uh, do that. You have to be able to put aside your personal things. As barbaric as it may sound, you have to.
Yeah. Man, how many siblings do you have?
It was just he and I.
Oh, wow.
Right now it's just me. Uh,
Wow. Did you escort his body home?
so I was able to escort him out of Afghanistan to Kuwait, and then from Kuwait we were told that we had to part ways. And I don't know the specific course, a route that he took to get home. I know he came in through Dover Air Force Base in Delaware and then continued on his way home. But the leadership that I talked to when I asked to escort him all the way home, they said I wasn't really going to do much good for him by escorting him home. I'd be much more useful to my family at home and them to me as well. Overall, it would just be much more useful for all of us if I just went home and was with my family. And um, so that's what I ended up doing. It was hard for me because I felt like I had let him down the day before when he was killed. It felt like I should have been there for him as his big brother. That's my job growing up. That was my job. I was there to protect him. Bullies in the neighborhood or at school or whatever, like that was me. I was there to stand up for him. But in the time that he really truly needed it, I wasn't there for him. And so I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to escort him all the way home because you never leave a fallen soldier. And I felt like not only was I leaving a fallen soldier, I was leaving my brother. And
Hmm.
that it didn't sit right with me for the longest time. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized that um, it was the right decision to come home because I needed that. I needed to be with family. I needed to be with people who understood what I was going through. Because that whole trip home, I was with other people. I was with other soldiers at the time, but none of them knew me. None of them knew my story. They didn't know what was going on in my life, and quite frankly, most of them were really happy to be going home because they're going home on leave or whatever, and I was going home to a funeral, and
Yeah.
I wasn't very happy about that. So, I felt like I had nothing in common with those other soldiers.
And it's hard because you want to let people in, but then you don't want to let people in,
Yeah,
and in that moment you don't know. You're going through so many emotions. Well, Scott, I have to tell you, I think that with every single episode that you do, with every single agency helping hand that you have on, with every conversation that you navigate, every single time that you talk to somebody, you're helping a Stephen.
yeah,
You're helping Stephen in that deal. So his legacy continues through the actions that you choose to take day in and day out.
right.
Every stroke of a paintbrush that you do, that's impact, that's legacy, that's Stephen living on in everything that you do. So just remember that you help one person, you're helping him. In my essence, it's a guy that we call Santa, or that we called Santa, right? That's why I do it. Stephen is your purpose.
Yeah, and I look at it like uh, I've been given this gift. I've lived on all these years after. Is going to be 12 years this year that he's been uh, since his death. I've been given a gift of being able to live all this time, and I don't want to waste it. I don't want to take this time and just squander it away and waste the time and not do something that's meaningful and going to leave an impact on other people. Uh, Ultimately, I want to do something that he would be proud of. If you believe in, uh, you know, people being able to look down on us from heaven or wherever it is that you believe, just picture it as, I want him to look down every day and have a smile on his face about what it is that I'm doing, and continuing his legacy through the podcast, sharing these stories and these resources, through my book that I wrote, sharing, not only is it my story, but it's also his story. And it's a story that, now that it's in a printed format that's out there, it's going to outlive, not obviously him, but it's going to outlive me as well. And it's going to be one of those stories that people can pick up years from now and read about the impact that this war has had on our family and our community and the people that knew and loved him.
So the book is called Surviving Son. An Afghanistan war veteran reveals his nightmare of becoming a Gold Star brother.
Yeah.
And as I understand, it's out in hard copy, which you're holding up right now, as well as in an audio version.
Yes. Yeah. So I recently released the audiobook. I narrated it myself. And so that's out there. All of it you can get through Amazon. So you can get the hardcover, the paperback, you can get the Kindle ebook, or you can get the audiobook, all through Amazon. If anyone's looking for a signed copy of the book, you can go to survivingsonbook.com. You can order a signed copy there. I'd be happy to send a signed copy out to you, or even as a gift to somebody else who you think might want to read it. Always happy to do that. But yeah, that's where you can find the book, and all that information there. So,
man, it has been an honor to have you on, just to, even if we could be a little bit of that healing journey for you and your family. It's been a blessing to have you here. The podcast is Drive On. And so I'm going to say, drive on, soldier, drive on. And to any of you veterans out there, please take the opportunity to listen to Drive On. There is so much information that comes out of that. There's so many stories that are so much like you and I's story. To be able to hear it come out of somebody else's mouth, to be able to understand what they've been through is exactly what we went through, and where we can connect the dots and where we can come together to heal is really where meaning is found. So, Scott, do you have any reading recommendations aside from Surviving Son for us?
I do, actually. There's another book. It's called The Hurricane Within, which I was honored to be able to endorse the book and provide my endorsement on. So it's my name is on the back cover with my little blurb and endorsement. But The Hurricane Within here is by a Coast Guard veteran. Her name is Ashley Leppert, and she participated in the Hurricane Harvey rescues in Houston. And she was part of that awful experience that took place down there, literally picking people up off rooftops, saving people from the floodwaters and all the terrible things that took place down there. She wrote about her experience during that time period, and also her journey afterwards as well, as she left the Coast Guard and what took place after that. It's really an incredible book. For people who aren't very familiar with some of the things that the Coast Guard does, she talks a lot about the different types of operations that they take place in, a lot of the search and rescue kind of things, the natural disasters, even some of the drug enforcement type things that they do as well. Really, the Coast Guard, I know in the military, we sort of treat them as
that's that step sibling.
Yeah, exactly. The black sheep of the military family or whatever. But they do a lot of great stuff for us, and oftentimes we don't even realize that they're there doing this stuff, but they really do. And I'm really grateful for her and the stuff that she had done. I think she shares her faith journey as well in the book, and I think it's just a really powerful read. So definitely, if you're looking for book recommendations, the Hurricane Within, highly recommend it.
All right. So we got the hurricane within and we've got surviving son. Scott, it's been an honor to be a part of your journey, to be able to listen to Stephen's story and just the impact that you've had and that you're continuing to have with veterans day in and day out, and different ways that you can find that either through painting, through writing, through podcasting, whatever that avenue looks like. Hey, folks, today's episode is only possible thanks to my friend and veteran producer, G. Frazier with 369sounddesign.com. He is truly the one with the hardest job of trying to make me sound good, even having to go as far as to buy new equipment just to make me sound halfway decent. So we are blessed by the entire team here at the Wartime Leadership Podcast. See you next time, and drive on, veteran, drive on.